life is so much easier when you take responsibility for things in your life and stop trying to put it somewhere else. Because once you take responsibility and try to fix it yourself, it's a lot easier to deal with. And generally, it will not happen again if you take ownership and find out why it happened and fix it right there.
You are now tuning in to the Roughnecks podcast with your host, Cole Nixon. Much love.
One last thing before we get into today's episode. A lot of people ask how they can support the podcast. Well, I have a couple easy ways. The first way is just listen and subscribe. And another thing you can do is go follow the Roughnecks podcast on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube as well. If you get something out of today's show, then do me a favor. Share it with a friend. If you really want to go above and beyond to support the podcast, then head over to roughneckspodcast.com and get you some of that merch. I appreciate all of the support, but let's get into today's episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Roughnecks podcast. This is episode, I don't remember, episode something, rather. I don't remember like saying what episode it is anymore because I get my episodes all mixed up, and we've kind of took a little break from the podcast. I've been kind of busy, crazy schedule, and it's summertime, so guests are also very busy, but try to fit everything in when I can. I promise. I just scheduled the whole month, at least I think the whole month of June and partially of July. Already scheduled those with guests, so we will definitely be getting content to you guys consistently. But joining me today for another episode of the podcast is somebody I met a very long time ago and I haven't seen in a very long time, but Mitch Lohr. Welcome to the Roughnecks podcast.
What's going on, Cole? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. I've been you've had a lot has changed since the last time I think we've actually been around each other. But we met probably we would have been 4th, 5th grade.
Yeah, like 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah, because I gave up. Actually, the last year that we played together was the last year that I played baseball.
Okay.
So that was it was 5th grade the last time I think that we may have seen each other here and there, but in between,
Right.
But other than that, we really haven't seen much of each other. So just kind of, we'll give a little background on who you are for the listeners and honestly for me who hasn't seen you in a long time.
Right. Yeah. So like Cole said, kind of the last time I remember hanging out with Cole was Little League baseball. I think I'm a year older than you, maybe. So I think I may have been 12. I'm 24. So played Little League baseball together. I remember a few sleepovers at Cole's house. Having a good time back in the day. But since then, I went to Newark Catholic High School. Cole went to Walk-In, so we were kind of somewhat rivals. Like you said, he didn't end up playing baseball in high school, but played against Walk-Ins. I played on varsity, started all 4 years at catcher for Newark Catholic, which I don't know if that's been done, at least at the catching position, but I know at least recently I'm the only one that's been able to do that. And we'll kind of get into some of the baseball accolades and awards a little bit later on, I'm sure. But after high school, I ended up going to Ohio Valley University for 5 years. I had an extra year from COVID and an extra year from a medical red shirt I took when I had an injury in college. And then I actually got to play a 6th year after my college, Ohio Valley University, shut down. The whole school was completely shut down. And we can talk about that here in a little bit because that was kind of a weird time that just happened last December. But I ended up going to Glenville State University to finish my degree and my career. Just graduated from there in May. So I've been home for a few weeks, getting back into lifting, getting back into my job. So it's been a good time.
Yeah, we'll kind of get it. We'll get into all of that, but we'll kick it off first, like with the the Catholic. We definitely did have a little rivalry there, and the funny thing is I live right by Newark Catholic now,
Do
so
you? Okay.
it's kind of funny that.
Yeah.
And Kyle Gibson and me and him were like super close when we were
Yeah.
in elementary school, and then it just kind of we ended up distancing apart when he moved out here, but. It's not the rivalry too. I feel like we don't understand as much about the rivalry. I remember my parents telling me like walk-ins and Newark Catholic used to be like a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't walk-ins and Heights. That wasn't a thing. It was walk-ins and Catholic. Like that was the big rivalry. Did you guys have like was it in every sport? I guess I didn't really notice. Like I knew of it in football. Basketball, I didn't feel like we were as like it was a rival, but we didn't take it as much. But it was like, did you guys have that in baseball as well?
I wouldn't say there was like a specific like Newark Catholic walk-ins rival. The big one for us in baseball, at least when I played there, was Granville. That was always a big one with Catholic. We always hated Granville. I think that was mostly every sport.
I'm pretty sure every school hated Granville.
Yeah. I feel you there for sure.
You guys ended up going on, didn't you? Did you win state when you were at Catholic?
Yeah, so I won state 3 out of my 4 years, and the year
damn,
that we didn't win, we lost in the state final on a walk-off. So we went there all 4 years and won 3 of them.
Which year did you lose?
It was my sophomore year, so it would have been 20,
at least it wasn't your senior year.
Yeah, it would have been 2014.
Because my sister-in-law, she went to Lakewood,
Mm-hmm.
and she played softball there, and they won, 3 state titles her freshman, sophomore, and junior year.
Yeah.
And then they lost her senior year, I think, in the Final Four.
Okay.
And I think it was a similar situation. It was like a walk-off, and it was like, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
So I remember back, did you always just kind of catch? Because I noticed in your bio it said first baseman, right?
Right. Yes.
So it was like catching was kind of your thing. I remember that because I always loved because you had your nice catching gear.
Yeah.
So anytime I'd have to catch for you, I always had the good gear.
Right. Yeah, catching was always my thing. And I had never played. I mean, Little League, everybody pitches, everybody, kind of plays everywhere. So I played a little bit of infield, pitcher, catcher. But I actually had never played first base until my 4th year in college, and that was because of my back injury. So I started lifting pretty heavy in my senior year. At the beginning of my senior year, I ended up hurting my back, but had no clue what I was doing. So I thought I was sore, pulled a muscle, something. So I kept lifting through it, playing through it. After my freshman year in college, I ended up getting back surgery in September. Well, so technically my sophomore year. And that's where my medical red shirt came from. I played that year, and then my junior year, I ended up having to kind of shut it down, stop catching, and I took my medical red shirt that year. So after that year, going into my senior year is when I kind of made the switch to first base and played that my last couple of years of my career.
So what was that kind of like? Kind of take me through like your process with that, because I'm sure that like you were a catcher pretty much your whole life, like that was your bread and butter.
Yeah.
Kind of take me through like, was it a hard transition to make going from being behind the plate and then having to go out in the field, or like was it kind of something that just almost came natural?
Parts of it came natural, and it's funny too because I actually the first year I moved away from catcher, I actually played a little bit of left field too, and if you know anything about me, I am not fast. I do not move around very well. So left field was kind of interesting. I liked it, but it was definitely not easy. But yeah, first base was a little bit more natural because, your job's to catch the ball, job's to keep it in front, scoop it, pick it out of the dirt. So parts of that was pretty natural. Now I hadn't taken a ground ball since I was probably 12 years old. So that was a little bit different.
Probably back when you played for aircraft.
Yeah. So I had to work on that a little bit. but luckily first base, you don't get very many ground balls in the actual game. So no, I was just happy to be able to continue playing after that injury, and I didn't really care where it was, what position it was, as long as I could still find a way back on the field. That's kind of what I was worried about, and so I was glad that I was able to find a spot there.
Did you have any, like, I feel like some of us kind of have a little bit of doubt almost, like when you have an injury, especially when you have to go have a surgery, then you have to do a medical red shirt. Like, did you have any like of feelings? I don't even know if doubt necessarily is the right word, but like, where you almost feel like, crap, what's gonna happen? Or where you were like, you know what, this is part of it, and I just got to fight through it.
So at first, before I knew kind of how serious it was, so what it ended up being was I herniated my L4, L5, L4, L5, and L5S1 discs. And it was pretty much, I kept playing through it because I didn't know. And by the time that I got my MRI and stuff like that, it was beyond repair. It needed surgery. So before I knew what happened, I was kind of just like, stick to it, play through it. I've never been one to, sit out for anything really. And so after I figured out what it was, and after, a year plus of trying to battle through the pain, there were sometimes a doubt and, not knowing, will I ever be okay again? Will I ever be able to lift the way I lifted or play baseball the way I played? And there were times where I could remember my freshman year, like after a 4-game weekend, especially on the road when we had to travel back 2-3 hours back to our school, I'd lay in bed and I wouldn't be able to sleep because it just hurt so bad. So definitely some downtime, sometimes a doubt, and not knowing, if it would ever feel better, because it felt really bad. And I was able to play through it. I'm pretty good at playing through pain, especially in sports. I've always been one to play through something minor and something even major like that. But there were definitely some times where, I was questioning whether it would feel normal again. So
how did you kind of go through the process of changing that mindset of, where because eventually there has to come a point where you got to keep going. Like, kind of take me through that process and the listeners through that process of dealing with the injury, having the doubt, to like almost flipping your mindset to like you're going to push through it.
Yeah. So after I had the surgery, it was in September of 2017. So my sophomore year, I was in bed for probably about a week. And then I was able to start walking around again, start moving around. I actually got back into baseball by the beginning of January of 2018. So it was only about a 4-month recovery, which is not bad for, back surgery. You hear back surgery and you're like, well, that's got to be pretty serious. You're probably going to be out for a long time. So I was fortunate that it wasn't a serious surgery where they had to, fuse anything together or, put any metal in my back. It was just a small surgery that they did. So after I started getting back into it, getting back into practice, I was able to gain a little bit of confidence, getting back out on the field, which really helped. It ended up being pain-free for a while until, I don't remember the exact time, but I ended up re-injuring it. Kind of the same pain came back. I'm pretty sure it was with team lifting, so it was weightlifting related again. And since I already knew what the feeling was, as soon as I felt that, everything started creeping back in. Like, I can't do this again. It can't happen again. I was better, and now it's coming back. So that was a rough time, but I mean, I eventually figured that if this is going to keep happening over and over, I have to figure out a way to, one, deal with the pain and figure out how to prevent the pain, and do somewhat of a rehab type thing where I need to really start taking my stretching and stuff seriously, my preparation for baseball and practice and stuff like that. So I remember I got a book I believe it was called, I don't know who wrote it, but it's called The Gift of Injury. And it is a book about it's either a strongman or a powerlifter who, had pretty serious back injuries that required surgery. And it's kind of his journey of how he battled through it and went through the rehab process. And there was a lot on mindset of how he dealt with it and how, just because you're hurt doesn't mean that, everything's over with and you can't do anything anymore. So after, I read that book, and after reading that book, kind of put a different mindset in my head, thinking about I got hurt, right? One or two times, same injury. I'm learning how to rehab, and I'm learning how to prevent it from next time from happening again. And that's something that now with my coaching, I don't coach weightlifting, but working with younger athletes, I can help them to kind of avoid the same mistakes that I made, especially when they first start getting into lifting, because that's how it happened to me, because I didn't really know what I was doing. I got in there, I started lifting, thought I just pulled something, but it kind of gave me a good experience to where now I can prevent it from happening to other people, and I know what to look for now. So just kind of turning it from, this happened to me, I'm in pain, I can't do anything about it, and then switching it over to, okay, I learned from this, so now I can prevent it from happening to me again, and I can prevent it from happening to anybody that I work with again, was a huge thing for me. So
That's like all of that you just said is crazy. Like you talked about the book, The Gift of Injury or whatever, but it really is, it was a gift to you in a lot of different ways. And what I really like is one, you learned yourself. All right, I have to do more. Like I have to, which I feel like in high school, none of us ever stretched. And even during stretches, we all half-ass stretched. And then come college, I realized that I was the same way. Like we stretch before lifting, we stretch after lifting, we stretch before, we stretch 6 times a day. And, at first you think it's dumb, but then all of a sudden you're like the one time, you kind of half-ass those stretches all day. And then it's like, damn, you pull a hammy, something real easy happens, but it taught you, more about yourself, but then you also used it to help benefit others, which I think is really great, because it's not just, you didn't just, you learn from it yourself, but you also are helping others, maybe you don't want them to have to learn the hard way. You're trying to help them so they don't ever have to actually go through what you went through. So take me through the process of, why did you decide Ohio Valley? What was that? I mean, I'm sure you had a handful of different schools knocking at your door wanting you, but why Ohio Valley?
So I actually didn't have very many offers, if any. Coming out of my senior year, I took a visit down to Lohr State, which is a junior college in Tennessee. They're pretty highly ranked in their conference or whatever. But I had a friend who went there. He played at Newark Catholic, Hunter Nance. I don't know if you know that name or not.
Yep. He played, what sports
did he
play? Was he a basketball?
Just football, baseball. Smaller guy, left-handed, but he played center field for us, and was actually getting looked at by the Mariners for the MLB draft when he was out of high school. But I went down there, took a visit, thought, that might be where I'm going to go. Wasn't very expensive as a community college, a 2-year, and then I'd go play somewhere else. But I took a visit down there, not much communication from the coaching staff, and wasn't really sure where I was going to end up. So that kind of fell off the table, and I had an offer from Bluffton, which is a D3 in North Ohio. But I kind of had my mindset on D2, or at least somewhere where I could get an athletic scholarship. And I actually ran into Ohio Valley at a tournament in West Virginia that I was playing on for my summer team. The coach was there watching. And at this point, it was almost July before we go to school. So I had no clue where I was going, a month and a half before I was supposed to go somewhere. So he saw me play. I didn't really have that great of a game. I remember, I don't even think I got a hit, but he talked to me after the game. I ended up going down there the following weekend to do a private tryout. And he offered me the next day, and I kind of took it just because that was pretty much all I had. And I was just grateful to get somebody to, pay at least for some of my college. So that's how I ended up there.
So you said 5 years there?
Yeah. Well, 5.5 technically. But,
yeah. So take me through the whole school just shut down? And this is after COVID as well, too. So you had a lot of weird times in the past few years. Kind of take me through this whole process.
So I'll kind of walk you through the baseball as well, kind of through the years. So my freshman year, I show up, don't know anybody at the school. There's a couple kids from local high schools. Like I know there's Pick Central, a couple guys from around here, but I didn't know anybody. So it was a fresh start. I kind of liked it. I was rooming with somebody that I had no clue who it was. I just met him. So in the dorms, and then freshman year, we ended up going 28-23. So we had a pretty decent season, especially compared to OVU. Wasn't really known for baseball or sports in general. It wasn't a very good sports school. I think the previous year they only had 15 wins. So we had a good year. We went to the conference tournament. I think lost a game, won a game, and then got knocked out. But so right off the bat, I started every single game at catcher, all 51 games. And, that's kind of what I was used to in high school. I wasn't sure if I was going to get the starting job, but they didn't really have anybody, and I stepped up. And so that was a good experience right off the bat. And I think that's probably what led me to stay there for so long, even though I enjoyed the people there and my teammates, but the school and the competition level that we had is not the greatest. But we go into my sophomore year, like I said, over the summer I go see the doctor, get the bad news, tell my coach. So I'm out pretty much the whole fall season of my sophomore year. Come back in January, come back into it kind of slow. Have a pretty decent year, didn't catch as many games as the previous year due to my back. So I caught about 35 games out of 50, and we're rolling. Have a pretty decent season, maybe like 500 or a little over. Junior year was the year I redshirted. So I sat out the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, went to the chiropractor 2 or 3 times a week during that time. And he was able to get me back to where I could play. Played 2 weekends and started coming back, and I kind of shut it down. I told the coach, I don't think I can keep going. I don't think it's worth it to try to push it for the rest of the season. And I think it.
Well, in the long run too, like you mess up your back, that can mess up a lot of things.
So he was pretty understanding. So I took my year, took the rest of the year off, tried to rehab it. I ended up getting another MRI, and I did re-injure the spot that I injured before. But I kept going to the chiropractor. I pretty much healed it back up because this time I knew that, don't try to push through this because it's going to get worse. So I was able to stop it in time to where I could do some rehab and figure it out to the point where I could, walk around pain-free. So did that. Senior year is COVID year. So we played like 12 games, and then I just remember we played on a Wednesday. We got killed. Practice Thursday. We're all out running around having fun, and we hear about these other schools, like, oh, this conference, they just shut their season down. This conference isn't playing anymore. And, at that time I was like, that's kind of crazy. Like that's not going to happen to us. And then the next morning we had a meeting, and they said, hey, we're gonna shut it down for the rest of the year. And at that time I still had an extra year, so I knew I was coming back next year. So it didn't hit me that hard. But like some of my roommates were seniors, that was their last year. So right when we heard the news, it was like, well, I don't know if what's going to happen. Are they going to let us come back and play? Are they going to give us a year back, or are we done? And only 12 games in, and then calling a meeting saying, hey, we're done for the rest of the year. That's pretty tough, especially for those guys. But it all worked out. We were able to, all of our guys came back the next year to finish. And so that would be my 5th year and that was the worst season we've ever had. It was fun with the guys, but we went 6-34, which is it's really rough. It's definitely not.
Especially coming from high school where you guys are going and going to state
it's a
and winning
big,
state,
big
and then
difference
like
from
coming and being
from
like,
winning everything, walking around like we're just gonna show up and win, and then you go 6-34, and it's like, well, I hope we win this game, but probably not. It's definitely tough, but I had fun with the guys on the team. Like I said, some of my roommates were seniors, so it was nice to finish out their career. And then because of the COVID year and my red shirt, I had a 6th year to play. So, I was getting old. They were all making jokes like, grandpa jokes. Who's this 25-year-old guy playing college? But I ended up coming back to OVU again for my 6th year. And over the summer, our head coach, and this was like late July, texted us and said, I'm out. I'm going to a high school job. I'm not going to be the coach anymore. And that kind of caught us off guard. And by that time, it was kind of too late to figure out how to get to another school. So I just kind of stuck with it. I was getting good scholarship. Well, wasn't paying anything to go. So I was like, I might as well finish it out. I already have all my classes for my degree. Finish it out, play one more year of baseball. So we had our old coach step in, and practice wasn't serious. It wasn't anything like we had before. Not that we were, very successful before that, but it wasn't taken seriously. And then a week before our final exams, it actually came out on the news that our school was like $23 million in debt, and that they were, thinking about shutting it down at the semester. And then, that kind of started a bunch of rumors within the school, and we ended up having a meeting that next Tuesday with our principal or our president, and he kind of broke the news to us. And right when that happened, I thought I might be done playing baseball. That was a big shock, because they said, at first we were like, well, maybe we'll still be able to come back and have our spring semester, have our baseball team, and finish our season. And then it kind of started sounding like more and more that they were shutting everything down. And so there were a couple weeks where I thought I might be done. And, just like the COVID happened to the seniors the year before, or the 2 years before, I thought that, it just happened again. Like they just shut us down and that would be it. But thankfully, I ended up talking to a couple schools. And it's funny because I actually got recruited by more schools as a 24-year-old than as an 18-year-old. So I got reached out to by probably 25 or 30 different schools. And I wanted to stay pretty close because I'm not trying to move across the country for 4 months and then move back. So my 2 schools were pretty much Rio Grande, which is here in Ohio, and Glenville State University, which is about 3 hours from here into West Virginia. So my old coach, the one that had taken that high school job, actually called the coach at Glenville and told him to reach out to me about coming to their school to play. And so he reached out to me, and we had actually played against Glenville 2 or 3 times. So I played against him. I didn't know the coach personally, but he had seen me play, and I guess he liked how I played and liked what he saw, even though I had never talked to him. So he kind of my old coach made the connection for me, started talking to the new coach at Glenville, and then that's kind of where I ended up. We scheduled a visit, and my younger brother, I don't know if you know Mason, you probably played against him in football. He was with me at OVU at the time too, and he actually went to Glenville with me. So we kind of stuck together through that whole time, it was nice to have, he's one of my closest friends, being my little brother. He's 21, so we're about 3 or 4 years apart. But he was with me at OVU, and then he came with me to Glenville, and we actually lived together in the dorms at Glenville. So that was kind of funny because, just like back at home. But that actually,
Was there as many fights at college as there was back
we
home?
get along pretty well now. I do get on his nerves. I know I can be annoying to him, but that's what big brothers are for. But yeah, it worked out well. We ended up going, as far as our record, we ended up going 35-17. Made it to the conference championship. Came from the losers bracket, so we had to win the championship game twice, and we won the first one, and then just ran out of gas and lost the second one. But nobody was hanging their heads. It was our best season by far. That program had only won, their best season was 19 wins, and we won 35. So we had a really, really good year, and I'm really glad that I ended up at a place that I could finish my career like that. So
you kind of going through your, I'm going to go back for a second. You were talking about the COVID and everything, and it, like, when you were describing everything, it just reminded me 100% of what it was like with me in football at Ohio Wesleyan. Like, I had two of my roommates were seniors, and the other one was he was a junior like me. And like, I just my roommate came in the one time, the one that was a senior, and was like, "Have you heard about all this COVID stuff?" And I'm like,
yeah.
What even is COVID? And like, he was like telling me about it. He's like, "Yeah, Miami's shutting down or something." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." Like, you don't, like, nobody thought anything of it. And then all of a sudden, like, we went on spring break, and they were like, "Yeah, you guys aren't coming back."
Yeah.
And we're like, "Wait, what?" And then, like you said, like, I still had another year. So like, and we were already done with our football season, so it was like kind of nice. Like, we still got our season in, but like, I still felt bad for the seniors who like didn't get to experience graduation and like the end of their year, or the last like few months of their college career. And then I was like, and then we were coming back, and I remember having a meeting in the summer, and they're like, "Yeah, the season's canceled," and I'm like,
yeah.
Damn, you just feel like everything just got ripped away from you and like you have literally zero control over it, and you're just like, what do you mean? Like, we're not gonna get to play a single game? Like, and we only got, I think my senior year consisted of 3 games, and it was in the spring, and we were supposed to have a fourth, and it got canceled because too many of their players got COVID. So it was rough, and like, going through it, and it's crazy because you just, like you said, nobody believed it at first, and then it just kind of happened. But you kind of talked like through your career, it kind of like your whole baseball career. It's just like you're up and down. Like, you went through up and downs, but like, that's a good comparison. And honestly, that's why sports is so good, and it prepares. Like, that's why people look to hire athletes and stuff, because they go through all different types of adversity. They deal with ups and downs. They know how to handle those types of things. And it's crazy, like, just to hear you, and you're still in a positive manner about all of it, which is awesome too, because like, you went through a hell and back in a way. Like, you dealt with a lot, but still managed to keep pushing through. And I don't even know what exactly your awards were, but I know you had plenty of them.
You said the awards? I'm sure I paid attention to them at the time, but I don't collect them and sit back on them and say, look what I did in high school. I will shout out one stat I had this year, because it's kind of funny. I was number 1 in the nation for hit by pitch. I got hit 31 times. 31. Yeah.
How many was it? 31.
50 some games, hit 31 times. So that was funny. I stand on top of the plate. I wear everything. So
I always loved back, like, kind of going back, way back. I remember, because you always had the curveball, which in Little League, and nobody really had a curveball like you in Little League. And I remember like seeing people like, crowd to plate, and you throw that curveball, and they turn because they think it's about to hit them, and they get right in the strike zone. And I'm sitting behind the plate, because usually I was the one catching for you, and I was like, oh, this is great. I love when I have ball number 2. Today's episode is brought to you by roughneckspodcast.com. If you want to support the podcast, then head over to roughneckspodcast.com and grab you some of that Roughnecks merch. We have everything from t-shirts, long sleeves, sweatshirts, hats, and many more. Stay up to date on the website for new merch coming every couple months. You can place an order and it'll get sent directly to your door, and I don't even take any of the money from it. The money gets put right back into the podcast to continue to improve it for you. If you can't afford to buy some merch, this time, then simply just subscribe to the newsletter, and it'll keep you up to date on all the new things that are coming. I appreciate all of the support you guys give. It doesn't go unnoticed. Let's get back to today's episode. So we're going to kind of move on to like, post-college stuff. And I feel like some of it maybe started in college, but you're a little bit of a catching coach yourself. And you got, I believe you started Big Three catching.
Yeah.
Is that your thing? Kind of take me through
Big
like
Three
what
catching
it is.
it officially started January of 2021 as the brand and the name and stuff. But I started giving one-on-one catching lessons after my sophomore year summer. So it was after I had surgery. And I remember I worked at big league sports or big league athletics. It's in Newark, the batting cage putt place.
I've heard of it.
So I had worked there, like front desk, just a high school job. But they had guys in there that did hitting, pitching, catching lessons. And I had never really thought about doing it. But as I got older, got into college, I thought that might be something that I'd like to do. And so I wasn't sure I wasn't sure who to reach out to or where to get started. But I ended up reaching out to a guy named John Piles, who coached me in like a summer all-star team. I think he just turned 31, but he went to Newark High School. His stepbrother, Brandon Linger. Don't know if you know that name. But John, he's always been around this area, so you might have seen him or heard about him. But he was working at a baseball training facility, and so I reached out to him to see if I could get in and maybe start with some catching lessons for whoever was in there. And I started off super small, just a couple guys. And like when you start anything, you don't have any idea what you're doing. I thought I knew, I knew catching, but I did not know how to coach it.
It's two different things. That's where I've had people ask me like about, and it's no different than football, or even people ask me about like, they want to start a podcast. And I'm like, well, I just figured it out on the fly.
Yeah,
I still don't
that's where a lot of people, and we can talk about that later with the motivation stuff. But a lot of people think that, if you see somebody successful that, they got it all figured out. And even if it's not successful, but it looks successful from the outside looking in, you think, oh, they know exactly what they're doing. Everything's perfect, but that's never really how it is. And, I don't know anything about podcasts or anything, but I mean, from what I see from you, it looks like you're doing a good job, and you might think, well, I have no clue what I'm doing, but,
I like to think I have somewhat of an idea, but I still there's times where people ask me certain questions. I'm like, yeah, that's way above like where my thinking. I don't think that deep about it.
Getting back to catching. When you first start out, you don't know what you're doing. Like you said, you kind of figure it out as you go. Since I've been doing it, I feel like I've just gotten better as the time goes on, as I do it more. And that pretty much goes for anything, whether you're trying to practice sports or you're trying to get better at anything in life. As long as you keep doing it and keep trying and keep figuring out better ways to make it happen, you're going to get better eventually. It might not happen right away, but it's going to happen eventually. But as for catching, I started out 2017. I was still in school, so I would, go back to school, come back home, do some lessons, go back to school, play my season, come back home for the summer. And then John ended up opening his own. He owned it with a partner, and he ended up going away and opening his own building. And his building's still in Newark, just at a different location. So I kind of traveled with him and went to his new building and have been doing lessons there since he moved. That might have been 2018. And, it was something I would do when I came home from school. I had a handful of, younger kids that I would teach. I started getting into coaching with John's team, which is the Ohio Hitmen. He's got like a summer organization. So started getting into coaching. I coached 16U, then the next year 17U, and then I moved down to 13U last year, and this year I'm with 14U. So I've been with 2 teams with 4 different age groups. And then throughout that time, I still did my catching stuff. It has grown into I've been working with all of the catchers in the whole organization during their practices. So I'll come in and, they're there for practice, and he'll say, all right, catchers go down with Coach Mitch, and I'll take them for their practice. That way, infielders can do their thing, hitters can do their thing, and then I'm working with the catchers, small groups of 2 to 4, 2 to 5. So that was kind of helping me grow. And then I ended up doing I did a summer camp and a winter camp, I think, at one point. But I would try to do 1 to 2 camps a year, at least when I was home from school, with anywhere from like 8 to 20 catchers. And that was like, I had an age 8 to 12 group, and then I had a 13 to 18, like older kid group. And then eventually I said, I think this is something that I can do, full time as my full-time job. And something I didn't mention, when I was home from school, I worked at a place called Creative Housing, and it was in Columbus. It was pretty much a maintenance. I did maintenance on houses. We owned houses for people with disabilities, and then our crew would do the maintenance inside the houses. So I did that from 2017 all the way up until the end of 2020, I think. I'm starting to lose track all the years, but I ended up as soon as I started this Big 3 catching, I told him, I'm going to try to do my own thing. I'm going to try to do this full time. And so up until that point, I would work from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then go do catching lessons from 5 to 8, and then come home, go to sleep, wake up, go to the gym, and do it again. And that was it was good. It kept me busy, but I've been doing this full time. Well, while I'm home from school, full time for about a year now, and so it's given me a lot more free time and a lot more time to develop actually coaching and taking videos and breaking them down and putting a lot more effort into the lessons. Even when I'm not there with the kids, I'm back at home working and figuring out, how can I make their next lesson better to where I'm not wasting time, or I'm not, going in there without a plan, and I can actually give them, more valuable time than just kind of going there after work and saying, okay, let's work on this today. You know what I mean? So like we said, I've learned a lot, and I think I'm continuing to learn, and I feel like every week that goes by and I'm doing lessons, I'm getting better, and I'm learning how to communicate to, not just different age groups of kids, but different personalities of kids, because, I'll deal with, kids that don't say a word, kids that are super shy, which is how I was when I was little, and then kids that just want to talk to me the whole time. So it's been interesting, but it's definitely something I like doing, and something that I think I can make a pretty big thing.
That's what I was going to ask, kind of about like the different ages and like the different types of personalities with kids, is like kind of managing that. And like you almost have to learn. Yeah. Like, I'm sure it doesn't take long to kind of figure out what type of, and some of them may open up like through time, which makes sense. But like, kind of learning like, and like you have to coach almost those different. Because I remember I actually recorded an episode with somebody, and then that recording ended up deleting itself somehow. So I'm missing that recording, which is just wonderful. All of my recordings actually, it was great. It was not what I wanted to have happen. I texted her and was like, so you're not going to believe this. I lost the recording, but she was, she's a lacrosse coach. And that's one of the things she was talking about was, like that was the hardest thing to learn, is like for her personally, she was like, I had to manage like different personalities. Like I can't coach this person as hard as I may have coached myself, or like, but I can do it to this person. Like you have to learn the different coaching styles for each unique person, and it's just something like, do you
Yeah,
have
so
that, and
that's
how do
something
you
that's
kind
kind
of
of
manage through
interesting
that?
because I coach, like I said, I coach the 14U. I'm not the head coach, not yet. I think I will be next summer, but I kind of help out. But I have a lot of, I have a lot of say at what goes on with the team. But it's a lot different when you're coaching one-on-one versus when you're coaching, a team of 12 kids. So I enjoy both. I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily better or worse at one or the other because they're both pretty different. But I would say one-on-one, you definitely have to learn the kids' personalities and how they take coaching because one, I'm never going to be a coach that's just going to sit there and scream at you. I don't think I don't yell. I can't remember the last time I've yelled. Maybe in baseball, getting pumped up, but I can't remember the last time I've yelled at somebody. That's just not who I am. And I think it's important to be yourself when you're coaching. You can't try to look at somebody else and how they coach and try to copy that exactly. You can take stuff that other coaches do and apply it to you and use it in your own way, but I don't think you can try to. No,
You
and
can't try
and
to
I feel
be
like that's
somebody that
something
you're
I've done a
not.
good job of is just trying to be myself, and I feel like I'm pretty different from a lot of coaches, at least from what I've seen and played for. But I think that most of the kids, from what I've heard and from how they react to me, that most of them like me and take what I say and actually try to apply it, which is the biggest thing in coaching. If the kids aren't going to listen to you, then whatever you're saying is just out the door. It doesn't really matter if you can't get it across to them in a way that they can understand and take it and apply it to whatever they're doing, then it doesn't matter. So I don't know if that answered the question. I kind of rambled
One
on.
of the
Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually how these podcasts
Yeah.
go. It's just sometimes we even forget I've had
Right.
episodes where we were just talking and we're like, wait, where did we even start with that? But one of the things that like you talked about, you didn't know what you were doing at first, but like that as a business, like a business owner or somebody that starts a
Yeah.
business, whatever, like that's how it goes. And that's with really anything.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is like just start, because you're never gonna have it all figured out. And if you sit there and wait for like the perfect time to, do this,
Yeah.
perfect time to start a
There
business,
is no
perfect time
perfect time.
to get back in the gym, whatever it is, there is no such thing as a
Yeah.
perfect time. Like the perfect time is now. Like and you're gonna
Yeah.
start, you're gonna try, you're gonna fail. You just got to keep going. That's where people usually like. That's where things turn south. That's where a lot of businesses fail. That's where things like happen that they when they fail that first time, when they run across the little bit of adversity or that speed bump, like they just want to
No.
kind of give up. But like nothing good comes out of quitting. So you just have to
Yeah.
keep pushing through. I promise there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like a lot of people don't believe it, but like you've seen it. I've seen it with the podcast. Like there's 100,000 people. Like there's millions of people that can attest to the business that they
Yeah.
started, or like Apple started in a garage, like these kind of things. Like things don't happen overnight. You have to put in the time, put in the work, and like take those failures. And I've said it a million times on this podcast, like you will
Yeah.
learn more from your failures than you ever will your successes. So just use those failures to your advantage, those mess ups. And like it's not even necessarily, it could be the minor thing, like just the little oh crap, I lost $100 here because I did something that I shouldn't have. But like whatever it is, you're gonna make mistakes.
Yeah,
Just
exactly. And I
learn
feel
from
like
those mistakes and just keep going.
I don't know when this kind of flipped because I used to I'd get so upset if I didn't get a hit every time I went up to a bat, and that's a terrible way to play baseball. But I feel like I did a pretty good job, at least I've noticed in the past few years of playing. Just if I don't get on or I don't get a hit, whatever, I'll get it the next time. It's not really that big of a deal, especially when you're playing a game. It's not like this is life and my business failed and I have no money. Like this is just it's just a game. It doesn't really matter if I didn't get on or I didn't get the hit that I needed to, I'd just try again next time. And if I would every time I didn't get a hit or didn't get on, said, I'm terrible. Why am I even here? Why am I playing? That's never going to get you anywhere. And I feel like I've done a good job of just letting things roll off and figure out how to do it better the next time I do it. So
that's like that's the next play mentality that we had in football. It's the same exact thing. If you like, and that's the thing, if you hold a grudge, if you sit there like against yourself and you're like, man, I suck, I struck out this time, whatever it is, and then you go up to the plate the next time, it's probably going to happen again. But if you have that opposite mindset of like, all right, I messed up this time, I didn't get it, I didn't get the hit, I still have another chance. There's still another opportunity. So like take that next opportunity and continue like trying to grow from that. You can't sit there and sulk. Like it's like the 5-minute rule that everybody has. Like take 5 minutes, be pissed off about it, and then move on from it. But like sometimes you can't even take 5 minutes, and that's one of the things that I think we learn as we get older. Because like when we're younger, it's harder to let things go, and then the older we get, it's
because
like,
you don't realize
why did I hold on to that for
really
so long? Like why did I care that? And it's like high school drama and that kind of stuff too. It's like you realize it doesn't matter, but it's the same way with life too. Like you can't sit there and like you had a bad day. If you stay in a bad mood the rest of the day, tomorrow's probably going to be another bad day. If you're like, you know what, I had a shitty day at work, it's going to be a better day tomorrow. If you wake up and you're dreading it and you're just like, God, this is going to suck, you're not going to have a good day. I've noticed it. Like, heck, I woke up this morning. I mean, I'm guilty of it still. I still do it. I'm not saying that I'm not, because I woke up this morning and heard the pouring rain and I work outside. I was like, this is going to be miserable. But then, like, we're driving to the job and it's getting sunny. And I'm like, all right, now this puts me in a better mood. Like, but if you have to have that mindset of, it's going to be okay. You're going to move on from it. It's going to be fine. So I wanted to talk too, because you're a little bit of not a little bit, a lot of bit of a little old school gym member. I've had a handful of them on here. I don't know if you know who he is. Jacob Varvel's been on here. And then I've had Dustin on here as well. So I've had a little bit of the old school on here. Kind of take me through, tell the people who don't know what the 4 a.m. crew is. Tell them what it is.
Kind of at the beginning. The old school gym used to be, if you're familiar, right by Watkins. Kind of right down 40, right on that road, right by the freeway. So that building was there for 12 years. I didn't really find out about it until I was maybe sophomore, junior in high school, and my buddy, you might know Tyler York. He used to be a Watkins guy. Yeah. Every now and then, he lifted there with Dustin, I think, and a couple of times he took me in there to work out in there. Just this was the first time I'd ever been there. I didn't even know it was a gym. That was that building right there. But yeah, he took me in there a couple of times. Never really came in after that. Starting my senior year, I wanted to take lifting a little bit more seriously. I wanted to get into lifting for strength and to get better at baseball and hopefully get stronger before I go to college. And my buddy from high school showed me this program on, I don't know if it was on Muscle Farm or on bodybuilding.com. You might have heard of it. It's Squat Every Day by Corey. And, he was like, this looks pretty crazy, pretty intense. I think we should try it. And I said, okay, let's start working on it. And I don't remember the exact day, but I remember probably late September, early October. I bought a membership to Old School. And I think the first week I started going like after school, after practice or something like that. And right away I was just like, this is not working. I don't want to lift at night. I don't want to lift after I've done everything all day. And I was following Corey at the time on like he did Snapchat stories and Instagram and stuff like that. And I saw he was lifting there in the mornings. And I said, well, if I can get, I only live maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes from the gym across the freeway. So I said, if I can get there before school and get a lift in and go back home and shower and get back to school, I'm going to do that because I'd rather just knock it out in the morning, get it out of the way. So I would wake up at probably 3:30 at the time, try to get there like 4:00. And at that time, Corey was coming in at like 5:30 maybe. So I was actually beating him. So I started the 4 a.m. crew before it became the 4 a.m. crew, which is funny. But I was in there following his program. I don't really speak up much, so I didn't, like, when I saw him in there, I didn't, go up and talk to him like he was a celebrity, even though at the time, that's what I thought of him. It's some famous guy that's on Instagram and bodybuilding.com. And I actually remember DMing him something like, I'm going to start working out at Old School or something, maybe I'll see you there or something like that. And so I just started showing up, doing his program, lifting, and eventually he started to notice, one, that I was getting stronger, and two, that I was there every day before school. And, it's not many times that you see kids in high school, especially, working out at 4 a.m. before they have to go to school, because before that, and you can ask, anybody that knows me, I hated waking up, especially for school. You could not get to bed. So, yeah.
Oh, I still do.
Yeah.
I still do. I'm better at it than I ever was, but God, waking up early. But see, that was my thing. I was like you. Like, I'd rather work out in the morning because, one, it just makes your mood better for the entire day. And because you wake up and, like, the first thing you do is you accomplish something and you feel good about it. And then, like, but that was, and like, because working out after work or after school or whatever, you're just like, man, like, I just want to go relax. Like, it's hard, but waking up. Once you get into that routine, it kind of becomes second nature.
I hated waking up, and especially at 3:30, that's tough. It doesn't matter.
So when do you go to bed?
So I try to go to bed.
What's your
now,
typical
the gym has moved to Granville, and it's a half-hour drive for us now. So we try to leave by 3:15, and I try to wake up. I do wake up at 3:00, and I try to go to bed by 8:30 if I don't have anything going on.
I'm keeping
I don't have any lessons tomorrow, so I'm gonna get a nap in tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, I wake up at 3, try to go to bed by 9, try to get at least 6 hours. And where I was going was, even waking up at 3:30 is still challenging. It doesn't matter how many months in a row you do it, or how experienced you are at it. If you go to bed and you wake up at 3:30 and it's dark out, it's tough to get up. And I just remember maybe 2 weeks into it, I woke up at 3:00 or 3:30 or whatever. And I just remember, opening my eyes and just saying, wow, I'm really excited to go to the gym. Like, I cannot wait to go in there and lift. And that's kind of where it all started. And then that kind of continued. I lifted every day, every weekday through high school, even through baseball season. I was in there at 4 a.m., even on game days. And I feel like that's really what got me into college. I was going to play somewhere. I knew I was good enough to play somewhere. But I feel like the strength that I got in those 4 or 5 months was really what helped me, at least once I got to college, become successful, at least as a hitter, because I was maybe 170 going into my senior year, no muscle, just, athletic. And I could play defense. I wasn't a great hitter, but, I feel like the gym really helped me with that. But going on to the 4 a.m. crew, like I said, I was the first one. And then you had guys that started to move from other states to come train, just to come live here and train at 4 a.m. So it kind of started 5:30, 5 o'clock, 4:30, and down to 4 o'clock. And we had more guys moving in here, training with the crew. And, guys would come and go, but we'd always get new guys coming in. And then some guys, they'd been there for a couple of years. They take a new job somewhere else. It's always been guys coming and going, but we have a group of guys that have been there for probably 5 or 6 years now since it all started. But moving into the new building, they bought it about a year ago, maybe a couple months ago. It's in Granville, actually, right next to that Wendy's on 16. It's just a huge white building. They now have moved the gym, old school gym, their Max Effort Muscle company, and all of their podcast equipment and company all into one building. So it's pretty cool to see what they've done from a business standpoint to where they could get all of their companies in one building and not have to run all over the place. And I've seen the benefits from that for them from a business standpoint of just how much more efficient they can be. But as far as the 4 a.m. crew, once it moved out to Granville, it became an invite only. It's not open to the public. You have to be invited by Corey or Dustin, or be an athlete that they train to come in there and lift. And so obviously I'd been part of the crew off and on because I had to go back to school, but I was welcome to come back to the new location, and it's about 20 or 25 guys that lift in there. And we kind of joke, some guys sleep in sometimes. So we had a guy that's usually always there before 4 o'clock. Past couple of days, he showed up at like 4:10, 4:15, and the whole place, he walks in, the whole place just starts clapping, just making fun of him for being 10 minutes late. And, 10 minutes late at 4 a.m., right? So he's not really late for anything, but it's just funny because, we all expect each other to show up and put the work in. So it's a really great group of guys. Anywhere from, we got a couple high school kids now that they're out of school, and all the way up to I think Todd, Todd Dunkel, he's an old guy. He the head coach for Columbus Academy baseball, but he is probably 55, and he's one of the strongest guys in there. And we got everybody from 18 to 55 showing up almost every day and putting the work in. So that's kind of the 4 a.m. crew and how it got started.
I mean, it's pretty much, so I've heard, I've never been, but I've heard, it's no joke. If you want to come in and slack off, you'll get kicked out. They don't care. They come in. If you go in early, you're there to put in work.
Yeah,
it's not you're not there to
definitely
just, half-ass workout.
Now, don't get me wrong. We like to have fun and we joke around with each other. But when it's time to lift and it's time to take a big lift, everybody stops. Squat, deadlift, bench. If somebody's taking a big weight that, is either more than they've ever taken or, it's close to a PR for them, everybody in the gym stops what they're doing and they look. Everybody is focused on that lift. So it's not like, you got people around doing all kinds of different exercises and, people doing their own thing. We come in there, we do Corey's program. We test his programs that he puts out on his website. So every time he puts out one of his Get Stacked workouts, we move on to the next month that's not released to the public, and we test all of his stuff before it goes out. So, if we're, putting in half work and not really helping him out with his programming, that's doing a disservice to him, and we're not really helping him out. So everybody kind of helps everybody, and everybody's there for the same reason, to get better. And it's just a really great environment where it doesn't matter. I'm pretty weak right now because when we go through baseball season, we don't lift much. So, I've been strong at points.
I was going to say, because I feel like a lot of people don't combine lifting and baseball. It's not I feel like you're, especially the 4 a.m. crew type of lifting in baseball, I feel like it's not something that necessarily collides with each other.
During baseball season, I would just be blowing out, injuries all over the place. There is a way to do it to where you can keep some of your strength, but you have to have a trainer that knows what they're talking about, knows how to offload, based on, okay, you guys had a tough weekend, so we're gonna take it a step back this week, stuff like that. And it seems like, at least at the 2 schools I was at, nobody really knows how to scale it based on, how you're feeling. So we ended up cutting out lifting the last 4 weeks of season because we had almost all of our starters dealing with an injury, myself included. I almost tore my hamstring. So So we kind of cut it out the last 2 months. I didn't really lift any weights, so coming back in, I knew I was going to be pretty weak, and I knew that coming in. It happens every baseball season. I'll come back home, try to get my strength back, go back to school, lose it, and then come back and try to get back. But as I was saying, it doesn't really matter if you can bench 185 or if you're benching 405, which we have multiple guys that do. It doesn't matter if it's your max weight or you're giving your best effort. People are going to stop and look and help you out and give you pointers on what you're doing wrong, what you can do better, and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's definitely if anybody listening who doesn't know what Old School Gym is, you need to just look it up. Look it up on Instagram. I think they're Join a Real Gym on is that their Instagram name, I believe. Definitely, it's people around the world know what that gym is. It's not just some little dinky gym in Pataskala, well now Granville, but it's Arnold's been to that gym, Braxton Miller, they've had a ton of big time names in that gym. An awesome program that they got going on over there. Dustin's also an awesome guy. I mean, having him on here, it was really cool to talk to. But I got a few final questions before we get into the best segment of the podcast. But I like to ask all of my guests this one question, and it's kind of a fun one, and it's it makes you think a little bit too. But if you could go back in time and tell your 16-year-old self one thing,
16. I would probably go back and say, I would probably tell myself to get into lifting at that point instead of waiting until I was 18 because, you can never start too early. But at 16, I would probably tell myself, most of this stuff school-wise and friendships, relationships, girlfriends, none of it's really going to matter come in a few years. And at that point, I probably cared a little more about that stuff than I should have. Just thinking this is the biggest deal in the world. This is my whole life right now. I'd probably just say not to take things too seriously and try to let things roll off your shoulder, especially if stuff doesn't work out for you, whether you wanted it to or you thought it should. I'd probably just say, take it easy. Don't take things too seriously, and everything's gonna work out. So
it's crazy how at 16 in high school, even until we graduate high school, we you always have those friends oh man, you think you're gonna be around them forever, you're never gonna separate, and then 2 years later you're I haven't talked to them in 6 months. You don't really you distance, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because everyone takes their own paths, and you don't want to almost hold anybody back. Do your own thing, but we hold on to those relationships, those friendships, whatever they are, so much when we're young that we don't even. And everybody always tells us it's not going to matter in 5 years. It's really not. You're not even going to remember. I can't even. I'll see somebody and I'm I don't even remember. I know I went to school with them, but I don't even remember their name. And it's somebody that I had a class with, I literally sat right beside or something. You don't, it doesn't, everybody takes different paths, and that's the best thing for us. We need to take different paths. Otherwise you almost get stuck. And I don't know. That's always been one of my biggest fears, getting stuck where, you grow up. Not that I don't like Pataskala, I'm not a giant fan of it, but, but you just don't want to get stuck. I didn't want to get stuck, where I grew up. I wanted to be able to expand and grow, go and do my own thing, and basically do what I want to do. And you can't hold on to those relationships when you're that young. It is the hardest thing to understand as a 16-year-old, but you will notice in 5 years later, you're going to be wow, that really did not matter one bit. But this moves us into the best segment of the podcast, which is Motivation Monday. Motivation Monday is the point in the episode where I allow a guest to give the Roughnecks listeners a little inspirational bump to set the tone for their week as they listen on Monday morning. Now, I know I'm calling this Motivation Monday, but this episode is actually coming out tomorrow because I'm a little behind. So this is Motivation Wednesdays to get you through hump day. So
something to get
what do you got
guys
for
through the rest of the
motivation?
week,
We'll call it Motivation
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Cole told me about this segment, so I tried not to write anything down because I don't want anything to be like scripted. But I just wrote a few bullet points down just so I wouldn't blank out when he asked me. So I got a few here, and I'll just start off kind of listing them. The first one I wrote down is have at least one non-negotiable thing that you do every day. And for me right now, I'm sure you've seen on my Instagram, I'm lunging 400 meters every day. I'm doing it at walk-ins. Did the first couple of days on the track, and then I've moved over to the football field. So if you can't really kind of visualize 400 meters if you're not a track person, on the football field, it's goal line to the back of the end zone, back to the goal line, back to the end zone, and then back to the goal line is 400 meters, or it's 440 yards. So doing that, if you've never done it before, one, you need to try it. Two, doing that is just as physically hard as it is mentally. Just the mental strength to go and do it every day, because it is physically hard, and it's not something that, I like going to the gym and hanging out with the guys and lifting. And, I spend about 2 hours in the gym just because it's, it's fun to hang around and talk to those guys and lift some weights. But on my way home, I pass walk-ins, and, right now it's only about I'm in like week 3, maybe day like 15, 16. So it's pretty easy. I'm on the start of a new streak, and that's always easy when you first get, you get rolling, you're feeling good. But, I'm sure I'm already thinking about it when winter comes and it's, a foot of snow on the ground. Am I going to drive by and say, maybe I'll just do it at home inside where it's warm, or, maybe I'll skip today and I'll do it tomorrow, which is not going to happen. I'm going to make it to a year. But do one thing per day that is one, mentally tough to do or physically tough to do. And I think it'll make you think. That's a lot of the time that I spend listening to podcasts is when I'm lunging. It takes me anywhere from really pushing it like 7 minutes, and if I'm just cruising, like 10 to 13 minutes. So it's not even long. It's less than 15 minutes a day that I do something that's challenging that I have to make myself do every day, or I can't move on. I can't skip it. So I'd say that's one big thing. And then the other one, these all kind of tie into each other. But the next one is consistency, because doing something just one day when you feel good, and then the next day you say, I don't really feel good, so I'm not going to do it today. That's not really going to get you anywhere, whether it's in life or business or sports, or even just taking, like in football, I'm going to take it easy this play, or, I'm going to run my route, half speed, because, they're not going to throw me the ball in this play or whatever. That's never really a good way to live anything, sports, life, business. Having the ability to tell yourself, okay, even though I don't feel good, I'm going to get this done because it needs to get done today. And I know that if I do it consecutively and don't miss, that's what's going to add up to, my ultimate goal, whatever that may be. Just being consistent with it, not missing. Corey says, one of his quotes is, he doesn't do anything special. He just doesn't miss. And, I can't remember, either he's on vacation out of the country or he can physically not get out of bed. That's the only 2 times he will not go to the gym. He doesn't miss. And, that's why he's been successful over the past 20 years that he's been, doing what he's doing. So the next thing kind of ties in, like I said, I wrote down doing something uncomfortable. So that was, for me, it's lunges right now. Back when I was in school, and I did this for almost 2 years, I didn't really keep track like I am with the lunges. But like during baseball season, I can't lunge 400 meters every day. I'm going to be smoked for practice or games, right? So I told myself, I can't do something physically hard, but I'm going to just do something mentally challenging. So I was looking up stuff I could do that, wouldn't tire me out for games or practices. And, I ran into cold showers. So I did cold showers almost 2 years. And anytime I showered, it was cold. Barely turn the dial till it's just enough water pressure to come out, and then you're in it. And now, looking back on it, I feel like I couldn't do it again. But I mean, I did it for almost 2 years. It was, I got to a point where it was just like I'd get in the shower. You know how you turn the shower on before you get in, let it warm up for 5 minutes, hop in a hot shower. I just got in, no water on, turn the dial a little bit, and let it run cold for the whole time. And it was definitely challenging. Not necessarily physically. I mean, I guess physically because the cold water is uncomfortable. It was more mentally challenging to say, okay, I'm going to get this cold shower. And I mean, this was during the winter too. I remember one time I took an ice bath after a lift or practice or whatever, and I hadn't showered yet. And I had to say, okay, I just took an ice bath for 20 minutes, and now I got to come home and take a freezing cold shower. And, I thought about, okay, well, maybe I'll wait till I warm up, or I'll just wait till tomorrow and take a shower in the morning or something like that. Or I'll just turn the dial up, just a little bit more so it's a little bit warmer. But just having the strength to keep it, set a goal and say you're going to do something and keep it at that and don't change it, I think is really important. The other thing I wrote down is practice what you preach. And this is a big one for me, especially with the guys I coach. I'm not an athlete anymore, but that doesn't mean, I can just go off. And I think nutrition ties into sports, and lifting and training ties into sports. And even though like most of the guys that I train are pretty young to where they're probably not lifting or, worrying about if they're eating too much candy. But I can't, I feel like I have to take care of myself and be physically ready to play to where I could say, okay, I could put the gear on and I could do this. All of the stuff we're doing in training, I could do it myself. And I feel like I can't let myself get to a point where I'm not able to do what I'm asking them to do. Because if I'm asking them to do it, I feel like I should be able to do it myself. And it's hard with sports because obviously I'm coaching now. I'm not playing anymore, but at least from a physical standpoint, I should be able to do it, and not to ask them to. We don't do a whole lot of running, but I can't say, okay, you have to run a mile in 6 minutes, and I can only run a mile in like 12 minutes. Which whatever. I'm not going to run a mile, so I don't know how long it would take. But you know what I mean. I can't expect them to do something that I'm not going to expect for myself. And that goes with like showing up early, doing their stretches at home when I'm not with them, or doing some drills at home when I'm not there to coach them, stuff like that. So, and the last one I wrote down was take accountability. And I feel like this is big for not just in sports, say football, baseball, whatever. You mess up a play or you make an error and it's your fault, and it's your fault. Don't say, oh, well, it took a bad hop, or I wasn't ready, or, this umpire's terrible. That's why I struck out. He made a bad call. Life is so much easier when you just say, you know what, that was my fault. I'm not going to let it happen again. Just take ownership for what happens. And sometimes, like in business, if you own a business and you employ people, and, something happens to where maybe they don't do exactly what you wanted, you can't say, okay, well, that's all their fault. How could they do that? I think it's important to say, okay, well, maybe I didn't teach them, or I didn't show them exactly how I wanted it to be. And so I can't really put all the blame on them and not take any responsibility for what they did, because at the end of the day, it's my company and I'm in charge of, showing my employees or whoever's working for me how I want things to be done. And if they don't get done, then that must be on me. And I've heard that a lot from coaches in college. We have a bad game and they say after the game, we lose or whatever. They'll say, you know what, it's my fault. I should have prepared you guys better. We should have worked on this more in practice this week. I'll put together something that will, better prepare us for the next time. And I think that's tough to do for a lot of people, because taking responsibility is not easy, and just blaming circumstances or blaming other people for what happened, for why something didn't work for you is really easy. It's the easy way out. And I feel like people sometimes get used to that, is just, putting the blame on other people and saying, well, if this wouldn't happen, then, I would have this, or if I was able to be here, I can do this, and just stuff like that. So I'll just leave it with that. Life is so much easier when you take responsibility for things in your life and stop trying to put it somewhere else. Because once you take responsibility and try to fix it yourself, it's a lot easier to deal with. And generally, it will not happen again if you take ownership and find out why it happened and fix it right there. So that's all I got for Motivation Wednesday to get you guys through the rest of the week.
Yeah, there's a lot to break down there, and I love it because, I like when you started with the non-negotiable, and like you talked about the lunges, and I think people overthink. It's one simple task,
and it's not,
like you said, it takes you 7 minutes, 15 minutes,
way more than 15 minutes.
How much time do we spend on our phone at night when you're laying in bed? That's what people, I think, misunderstand. Like, they're like, well, I don't have time. Well, how much time do you spend in the morning looking at your phone? Like, what's the first thing that most of us do in the morning? What's the last thing most of us do? And like, I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. We've all done it. But like, when you start to look at it that way, like, you have to value, where is your time more valuable? Like, because you're bettering yourself, one, mentally, and two, physically. Like, you're getting a double bang because you're getting both of them. And like like you said, I feel like the mental thing's really the biggest challenge, because it's really easy, especially because when you're by yourself. Like, it's really easy to just be like, you know what, nobody's here. Who cares? But that goes back to like, the accountability thing. Like, in the back of your mind, you're going to be the one that knows, and you don't necessarily have to like own up to anybody. Like, oh man, I didn't finish my lunges yesterday. But like and like the thing you kind of were talking about with the accountability, I think if you take accountability upon it, like yourself, if like you mess up a play, you mess up, something with work, whatever, and if you're getting yelled at or whatever, you just have to kind of take it on the chin and be like, you know what, that's my fault. You have to leave your ego at the door almost, and like take it on the chin. And I think if you take, in my opinion, like when I've seen, my boss take accountability for like, hey, I messed up, coaches take accountability, players that I've played with, when you take the accountability for your mistakes, you earned respect from your teammates, your peer, like everybody. I think you earn respect from a lot of people, because it's like, you know what, he realized he messed up, and that's one of the things when people take accountability. Exactly. You realize you made a mistake, and usually the people that can take accountability, they can learn from their mistake. Like they realize that's the biggest thing, is like, if you take accountability, you have to, like, most of us understand what happened. That's the biggest thing. And it's like, I've seen it in the workforce, like with people where you'll have people who, want to, they're like, well, your boss will come up and be like, you did this wrong. And they get all defensive, like, well, no. And it's like, but then you're sitting there going like, why? Like, what good does it do? First off, like, when the boss says something, like, you don't really have a say, and like, depending on what it is, but like, you don't really have a say. Whatever the boss say, like, it goes. But you said a lot of good stuff that I loved, and like the consistency is like, you have to be consistent with things if you want to change your habits, like whatever it is. And I don't remember the exact number. There's like a science behind it, but it takes a while for something to become a habit. I feel like it's like 21 days, like, or something like that. And like, it's not something that just happens. Like, how many people do you see? Like, I always make fun of New Year's resolutions. Not that I'm against them necessarily, but like, they last for 2 weeks most of the time. Nobody really follows through with them. If you ask them at the end of the year, hey, what were your New Year's resolutions? Most of them would be like, I don't even remember. Like, because that's why, like, I don't like necessarily, like, if you're going to do something, and I feel like, me personally, write it down too, somewhere that you see it every day, if you truly want it, because then you see it every day, and it's a daily reminder, like, shit, like, I need to do this, like, I have to do this. And like, you driving past walk-ins, that's your reminder right there. Like,
and that's also why I posted on my story, because
it's there. I gotta go do it.
I know that nobody really probably cares that okay, I'm up lunching around the track at 7 a.m. or 6:45 or whatever. Nobody probably really cares about that, right? But for me to put it up there, and then people are going to see it, and then maybe I don't put it up one day, and somebody messages me and says, "Hey, did you get your lunges in, or why didn't you post, or where's your post at?" And just for today, like you said, you woke up, it was raining. I was excited because I knew I was going to drive up to the track. Nobody was going to be there. I was going to be the only one out there. And it was pouring rain. And I got
That's
there.
when it's even better, yeah,
said,
when nobody's there.
You know what? It's not going to be that bad. It's going to be 10 minutes. I think it was like maybe 12 minutes today. Took my shirt off, went out there, got it done, got back in the car soaked, and went home and took a shower. And it wasn't that bad. And I just kind of use that for motivation. Like, most people would say, and like, I'm going to call out my brother because he was with me too. And I'll cut him some slack because he's playing summer ball and he had a game today. But he was with me at the track, and he said, I think might wait till later when it's not raining outside, or I might skip today. I got a game or whatever. So I'll cut him some slack. But like me going out there, it was pouring rain. I knew it was going to be, miserable. I was going to get wet. I was going to get soaked. And then just choosing to go out there and embrace it and do it anyway. I think that's big, and that might not be easy for a lot of people. But I think that's just something that, when things aren't perfect, then you can think about them and say, okay, this is going to be even tougher than it usually is, and I'm going to do them anyway. So
I like that you said embrace it. Embrace it's the biggest thing. Like, honestly, like, and that's like with uncomfortable stuff. Like, you just have to embrace uncomfortability. I don't know if that's a word, but you have to embrace the uncomfortable. Embrace the uncomfortable. That's what we'll say. Like, you have to take it in because that's the only time you're gonna grow. If you're sitting in your comfort zone, you're never gonna grow. You have to do the uncomfortable stuff, like you talked about. And most of the time, like, those non-negotiable things, they need to be something that's uncomfortable, something that's challenging, mentally, physically, both, whatever it is, something that'll help you improve yourself or others. But with that, I think that's a wrap on episode something. Rather, it's 10 something. I think it's 105. I don't know. I think it's 105, but that's not quite important. What is important that we got another great episode in the books. Where can people follow your catching?
So if you want to follow me and more coaching, I have catching, like separate accounts. I like to separate stuff. So if you want to follow me and like lifting, lunging type stuff, that's just going to be at Mitch Lohr. Just Instagram, Facebook. I don't have Twitter or TikTok. Sweet. And then for catching, catching is mostly just me posting videos of the kids that I coach. So it's mostly just, younger kids doing their drills and doing catching lessons. But that is at Big 3 Catching, and that is on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. I'm not very active on TikTok and Twitter. I kind of hate social media, but I know it's important to grow business, so I'm trying to figure out how to learn it and do it. But most of my stuff's on Instagram.
That's where it's always hard to like take a break from social media when you have with the podcast. Yeah, like it's like, because I'll get yelled at times by the girlfriend of, you're always on your phone. Like, I'm on the Roughnecks account right now trying.
I got the same thing.
Like I'm not trying to ignore you. I just need to get this post ready for tomorrow or whatever. It's just, yeah. But hey, man, I really appreciate you coming on for an episode of the podcast. Probably definitely have to have you on again in the future once that business grows a little bit. Till Friday, I already have that episode recorded, so we're on to. It's actually it's another family member on the podcast. I haven't had all the family on. I've only had one family member, and now we're about to have 2 more. But until Friday, you guys know the deal. Life is hard, and it's going to knock you down just like a bull does to a bull rider. Don't let the bull of life walk all over you. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life. Roughnecks, out. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. If you like today's episode, then be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with a friend if you got some value from it. Head over to social media and follow the Roughnecks Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to that YouTube channel. Don't forget to get you some of that merch by heading over to roughneckspodcast.com and subscribe to the newsletter while you're there. See y'all next week. Roughnecks out.